careful. Okay? So I think the laboratory is a very, very good thing for a business student. Now I'm just going to show you one other thing here, and then I'm going to go on to, whoops, how do we do this, man? All right? Okay. Everybody knows what this little fellow is, Rubik's Cube. That is the easiest thing to solve if you know how to solve it. Okay? And I'm just going to go through this because it doesn't pertain exactly to you, but it'll set up the next piece about the Irish Angel. I do think these networks are powerful. They're powerful not just for the university, but they're powerful for the student, and they're powerful for the business community. And the primary objective of this network is to teach. Okay? It's the overarching purpose. Students learn from practitioners. I just talked to you about that, so I'm not going to go over it. The secondary, the university benefits from it too. The second thing I'm going to tell you, purpose, is it creates opportunities for students. And let me tell you how it creates opportunities. Yes, some of these business plans actually turn into businesses. But I would say, honestly, it's a very small percentage of them. We try and celebrate the ones that do, and you think that by the time you listen to Jim and me speak, that 90% of them turn into businesses. They don't. Okay? But I can tell you that a high percentage of people who go through this will meet a capital source, will meet a future employer, or will take something out of that, that when they do go get a job, you would be surprised at how many people in the Irish who presented business plans to me at Notre Dame have called me back for capital, have called me back for advice, have called me back for relationships. And it's a valuable alumni network. The head of my office in Moscow, Armin Badalov, is a Notre Dame MBA graduate of Russian background who was in my class like this and also a business planning competition. And he's created a career out of that opportunity. So the second thing, benefit is it holds benefits for students. Startup opportunities exist, employer relationships develop. And the third thing that I want to tell you here is it benefits the university. Let me tell you why that's important to you. If you are coming to this university to suck out knowledge, to get some skill sets with the intent of never coming back to the university, you really, if that's your goal, you really shouldn't be sitting here, because it's a stupid strategy. You have an affiliation with a platform here. You have affiliation with a network of people. You want to make sure you do everything you can to make sure that it survives you and grows, because it will feed you for a long time if you keep a relationship with it. If you feed it, it will feed you. So it's my belief that even as a student, now you're older students for sure, but even as a student, an executive, it's very important that you do what you can to make sure this concept grows. Because in the end, I won't go through all the other benefits for the university, but in the end, if you get all those colors right, and this network does benefit students, it benefits the university, and it benefits a broader community. Okay? I promise you that's what happens at Notre Dame. Now for me, I do two things, really, in my association with Notre Dame and the Irish Angels. Number one, I am a judge. I was a judge for the Taco Fund. Unfortunately, I wasn't the fellow who asked the question, did you ever go taco? But I'm going to go back to what Jim said about that example. You may think, how silly. Who could stand up in front of a write a business plan, do that, and subject himself to the risk? By the way, am I talking too quickly? Okay. Who would subject himself to the risk of having that question asked? And you would think on the face of it that nobody would. But as there's a lesson there. as you go through your business plan, there are so many aspects of that business plan you need to be prepared to ask questions for. Okay? Because when you present that plan, the judge, in this case the judge, or in real life, the investor, the venture capitalist you're trying to sell the deal to, he thinks he's a pretty smart guy. And usually, he does what? He's asked to see the plan in advance of your meeting. And he wants to see it in advance so he can read it. But you know what? Why else he wants to see it for the most part? Because he really knows he's not as smart as he thinks he is. So he gives it to different people on his staff. And they try and pick it apart. He collects his knowledge, their knowledge, so he's loaded with an arrow, a quiver of arrows to try and shoot down that plan. And my advice on the plan, before you come to a judge or to a venture capitalist, is to have that plan done at least 2 weeks in advance. Okay? And you walk through with a peer that plan. Because when you do for the first time, you'll see how shallow and how many holes there are in that plan. So always go through and ask yourself the question, where can someone shoot this plan down? And I'll give you one hint. We are all different. Some of us pride ourselves as being financial gurus. And the people who provide themselves as financially good will spend most of their time in that plan focusing on the financial model. And it just sinks. And when I look at a plan is I try and find the profile of that person. And I'll say, yeah, this guy's financially sound. So now let me step over here and see if he really understood something about the market. Because if he's a right-brain guy on the quantitative side, he may not be so good at understanding his customer. And so I'll spend more time focusing on that end. So when you look at a plan or you look at your own plans, be honest with yourself about where you're good, because you'll find your weaknesses in the write-up in the places where you're not so proficient. Okay? And take great care to make sure that plan is balanced. Because you never know what that capital partner is going to be. The second thing I would suggest to you, and I've learned from being an Irish angel and an investor in these plans, is find out who you're talking to. In real life, you're going out to an investor capital or a bank or a source of capital. You should do research as to who that investor is. That is important as writing the plan. And let me tell you why that may not be so apparent to you. First of all, the obvious. Find out where he invests for the most part. Is he targeted a certain kind of investor? If you invest in a certain sector, understand the commonality of what those investments are. Let's say I'm in energy. You come to me for an energy business. You should figure out, before you step foot in my office, if I'm investing in startup energy companies, or if my fund or my capital needs to invest in existing cash flow companies, or if I have a sector in cash flow companies and a sector in development companies. So try and figure out a profile. And there are a couple of reasons for doing that. Is when you go into a capital source, the most effective thing you can do, if it's allowed, is rather than stand up in front of this fellow or this woman like I did, walk up, turn on a PowerPoint, and start flipping through slides. Big mistake. The most effective thing you can do is sit down, engage that individual, and start talking to him about his fund or his source of capital. Say, I noticed you've invested in South America recently. Tell me about that, and start engaging him in conversation. And the reason you do that, is you start to break down the sharpness of his arrows. Because when he comes and meets you, remember, he thinks he's a pretty smart guy. And so he's ready there to try and test you. And now all of a sudden, you're talking about him, and he's opening up his kimono, and he's starting to get to know you. And when you do that, it softens and it makes the conversation less polarized, and you get a better, what we say at Notre Dame, an authentic dialogue about what you're trying to do. Does that make sense to you? Okay. So, as you go to these people, preparation isn't just preparing about what you want to sell. It's preparation about who you want to buy it. Okay? So, a couple things there about what I do as a business judge. Now, the other part of my activity with the Irish Angel Network is I'm an investor. Now, I don't even know if Jim knows this. He probably does. The way I got involved in it